As OTAs roll on, SirVocea Dennis seems to be embracing his new role. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at eKlosky WTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. And I am here with you at least 3 days a week for the month of June, along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. OTAs continue for the Bucs, and we heard from plenty of people on Tuesday. That is coming up in a little bit, but want to start today with SirVocea Dennis. Now, linebacker is a position that we have talked about a lot. I've talked about a lot. Basically, it's been covered extensively on this show because it's the position that fans are most concerned about. But Todd Bowles seems to like what he is seeing. He was asked on Tuesday which player has really impressed him the most through the first week of OTAs, and Bowles said, quote, "Really the only one was Voss," meaning SirVocea Dennis. He gets his hands on a lot of balls. If you want to say he's had a very good 4 days, then he's had a very good 4 days. That doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but I like where he's at right now, end quote. He then went on to talk about SirVocea having been here for 2 years and understanding his role in the defense, but just staying healthy. SirVocea spoke about his health as well, saying, quote, "I feel great. Actually, I felt great during our last playoff game, really. It just feels amazing being out here practicing with the guys, just being around football and just being back just to play healthy," end quote. Evan, what is your confidence level in SirVocea appearing to be poised to step in at starting linebacker next to Lavonte David, who, by the way, came out and said that SirVocea is someone that can take over Lavonte's role that he's had on this defense for the last 10 plus years?
I'm a big fan of SirVocea Dennis. I don't want to say that the linebacker position is, all handled because they now have Dennis and Lavonte over there, right? I still have questions of whether he can make it through an entire season. He still has only played like 17 games in his NFL career, and a lot of that has been on special teams. But as I've always stated, you put on that Lions film, you see what the potential is. We have seen throughout rookie minicamp when he came into the league and these OTAs and training camps and anything that he's a part of, when he's on the field, he's making an impact and he's making big plays. So it's not a question of his ability and what he can do in his defense. I think that he can definitely be a very good linebacker in this league, certainly for this defense. But I have to see it, and I have to see it week in, week out during the NFL season. And, sometimes your best ability is the availability, and I need him to be available. So very high on SirVocea Dennis, but certainly don't want people at home who, have high expectations for this team. I think we all do here. I don't necessarily want to say my questions have been quelled at the linebacker position. They have not. But if you were to tell me now he's healthy the entire season, do not worry about that, I would be stoked. Yeah, I'd be very high on what SirVocea Dennis can do for this team in the 2025 season.
Well, and I know it feels like we're kind of beating a dead horse talking about the linebackers week after week, but this is going to be a running theme until we see these guys take the field, right? Like that's where the concern lies, that this is going to be the weakness of the defense. And if it looks like it did last year, that could wind up costing them some really, really important games. So I think the fact that SirVocea appears to be the healthiest that he's been since being drafted is really kind of an important thing to talk about, right?
And to him, he had a shoulder injury dating back to his college days that he played through and has now been able to get that cleared up. So hopefully that helps, right? That he's not like managing something for years and years and it's just like deteriorating. He was able to get it done, even though it cost him the 2024 season for the most part. But I mean, the reason why he keeps coming up is not because you and I are debating it. Beginning of OTAs, he had an interception, which is, something we're going to talk about a little bit later, is the importance of turnovers. The next week, Todd Bowles comes out and says, yeah, I'm loving what I'm seeing from SirVocea Dennis. We didn't ask him in that question what he sees from SirVocea Dennis. The question was, hey, we weren't around, the media is only open on Tuesdays. Based on what you saw the days we weren't around, did anyone stand out? And he mentioned SirVocea Dennis. So he, with his play, is forcing us to talk about him. And then the coaches, more specifically Todd Bowles, is saying, hey, yeah, what you see and what you feel is what I'm getting. So that's what it comes down to. And yeah, I think that he is, you talk about the top three most important players this season, I have him on that list, and that's not to say, like, obviously Baker's the most important, Mike Evans, all that stuff. But, removing injury aside, I know what I'm going to get from those guys. I don't necessarily know what I'm getting from SirVocea, which is why entering this season, SirVocea is probably, I'll modify it to not important, but most interesting players this upcoming season. SirVocea Dennis is in my top three.
Yeah, well, and for those, I talked about it on yesterday's episode. For those on Hassan Reddick watch, Bowles was asked if he expects Hassan Reddick to attend mandatory minicamp next week, and Bowles said, minicamp is mandatory. That's about all I can tell you. And then somebody asked if on what his level of communication with Reddick has been, and he just said, I keep in touch through his position coach. So, I mean, that's kind of the situation that we're in. Again, I'm not concerned about Hassan Reddick showing up. I don't think you are either. But yeah, if something happens where Hassan doesn't show up, that certainly makes things
next Tuesday will be a conversation. If he's not there, it will be a huge deal. Not expecting it. I expect him to be here, but I get the uneasiness, but yeah, look, it is what it is. Evidently, I guess Reddick has been in the facility at some point in this offseason, which is more than I can say about Randy Gregory. But by all accounts, he's going to be there on next Tuesday, and hopefully that's the end of that.
And everybody can just take a deep breath and relax.
Mm-hmm.
But can Antoine return to his 2023 form and help this team get more turnovers? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The NBA Finals are set with the Oklahoma City Thunder as the favorites at minus 750, while the Pacers are at plus 530. SGA is the favorite to win the Finals MVP at minus 550, while Tyrese Halliburton is at plus 700. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Antoine Winfield Jr. was, well, to put it nicely, he was slightly disappointing last season. Not entirely his fault, considering all the injuries, not just around him, but the ones that he was dealing with all season long. But one of the things that was so magical about his 2023 All-Pro performance was his ability to create turnovers at crucial times. Well, Antoine was asked what it's going to take for the defense to get back to getting those turnovers, and he said, quote, working in practice. I feel like I say this all the time when it's like, what do? You have to work on it in practice. You have to get those looks in practice. So when it's a game, it's just muscle memory. You see the ball, punch it out. If it's on the floor, pick it up, scoop and score. It's all just muscle memory and just practice. End quote. Evan, the Bucs were a -5 in turnover differential last season. Granted, Baker's league-leading 16 interceptions did not help matters, but the Bucs
neither did the 7 interceptions.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the Bucs took the ball away just 18 times. So what do you think it's going to take for them to swing that differential back into the positive in a season where there are legitimate championship aspirations?
You know, I definitely think that's part of it. Todd Bowles traditionally has emphasized turnovers. Like last season was one of the worst of Todd Bowles' career, certainly as a head coach. And part of it is scheme, up to date. You know, you play soft in certain spots and you play zone. Teams are just going to attack the soft spots in the zone. Part of it is execution. Catch the dang ball when it comes your way, which I think I forget which positional coach mentioned it. I think they tallied it like 11 dropped interceptions last season, something along those lines. I got to get the exact quote on that. But so you got execution, scheme, and really just ingraining it into your soul, which is what Antoine's alluding to, that, you know, when you go on the practice field and you're practicing, like, have that mindset, we're taking the ball away. And at least in the little portions of OTAs that I have seen, Deion Jones, by the way, had a twirling 360 interception on Tuesday during the second week of voluntary OTAs. Everyone was hyped. I didn't see who dropped an interception off a tipped ball, but everyone was really reactive. So I'm seeing the sidelines very much involved in the turnover process. It is something that they are keenly aware of, and, you know, harping on it day in, day in, day in is going to eventually provide some results. You still have to execute, but I think really just overemphasizing it, and then also Bowles trying to tighten up the scheme a little bit this year to create more pressure on the quarterback, because I just think sometimes, unless, you know, there's a blitz called and he can kind of make you go crazy, but a lot of times he does make the job easy on the quarterback because he can just dump it down and take the 5, 6, 7 yards, whatever. And that's probably been the biggest issue for this team. But, you know, last year, severely injured. 3 seasons ago, severely injured. I believe we complained about turnovers during those stretches. A couple of years ago, more fortunate injury luck. And things were looking good with Antoine Winfield Jr. being at the head of the snake. So certainly him being on the field is vitally important. He moves around. He does a million things. And I think I'm going to guess through observations, through listening to the coaches now all offseason, some of the players defensively. My guess is you're going to see a lot of players on that on the defensive side of the football line up in spots where they look out of position, and it's going to screw with teams. I think it's going to be widespread. I think, Tyke could be at nickel, dropping into safety. I think it's going to be like you just literally you do not know. So last year, Zion and Jamel, when they were healthy, right, you knew exactly where they were going to line up. Stuck them right there. I think for Todd, things were just a little bit too stagnant in personnel, and I think you're going to see a whole shape shifting focus this time around, which should create more confusion, which should create more turnovers.
I want to revisit a mailbag question that I covered on yesterday's show because I think it is pertinent to this conversation, and I would love to get your take on it. But I had a question come in from Twitter from Evan, and he said, who is more important to a defensive turnaround in 2025? Hassan Reddick coming off the edge like he did with the Eagles, getting not only sacks, but also the forced fumbles, or Antoine Winfield Jr. returning to his all-pro form in 2023?
That's a very good question, by the way. I would say Hassan Reddick, because if you do not have the four-man pressure that Todd Bowles wants to run, again, don't look at the blitz. Don't look at the sack numbers for the Buccaneers. Todd Bowles is always going to get his sacks. It's not about how many sacks you get. It's about how you're generating the sacks. And Todd Bowles, a lot of times, has to sell out to get, a blitz call in there, which is going to compromise the back end, which is going to mean you might bleed a ton of yards, which is a problem. And even though you might get sacks here or there, a lot of times you're getting burned to create those sacks or to try and create them. So if you have your front four settled, if Reddick, Cansey, Vea, and Yaya can create the havoc that we all think that they can create, well, now you got something cooking, because you can pretty much drop the 8. And it seems like the formula these days, right? Something that Tom Brady also hated. It's not a new formula, but it's certainly one that Philly just thrived on coming off of a Super Bowl victory. If you can get pressure with 4, you are in an immensely better situation to create positive plays on that side of the football. So that's why I think Reddick is more important than Antoine, because if the front 4 does their job, the back end should have an easier job to create success. You can take more risk. You can press more. There are way more things you can do.
See, and that's kind of along the same lines of what I thought was if Hassan Reddick is doing his thing, by default, Antoine's probably going to return to all-pro form because he's going to be able to play a little bit more freely. He's going to be able to do a lot more things. And, as you said, Bowles can start putting all these different disguises in there because he can trust his front 4 to get in there and create the pressure, create sacks, create bad passes, throw off timing, all those things. So I'm glad we're on the same page, Evan. It makes me feel much better about our friendship at this stage in the game. There has been plenty of talk about the receivers in Tampa, but one position has been getting overlooked in the process. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on the WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs, and we have talked a ton about these receivers in Tampa since they added Ibuka and Tez to the mix. I put out a TikTok talking about how the Bucs have the best wide receiver room in the NFL, and I had somebody say that Unk has a bachelor's in yappery. I had somebody else ask me if I even watch football. I am old, though. I guess I am an unk. That's what my kids say anyway. But,
you're young if you're using the tiki-taki.
I mean, I don't know how to use the TikTok. I say, hey, kid, post this, and it's done. We have also talked about how much fun Bucky is to watch and how electric he is, how important Rashad is. But we seem to be overlooking the tight ends and the role that they not only played last year, but that they'll probably need to play again this year. So Cade Otton spoke with the media about his season last year and, what he gained from that. And he said, quote, I think individually and as a group, we pride ourselves on preparing as best we can for any given situation. And so I just try to be ready if the ball is going to come my way or not, and try to help my team the best way possible. It was definitely good for my confidence and for the team's confidence in me to have that production. And I want to be ready to give that kind of production in any given week, end quote. Now, Baker's got weapons on weapons on weapons on weapons in this offense. But last year, Chris Godwin goes down and Otton becomes a third down machine. We know third downs were Grizzard's territory last year. So how involved do you think the tight ends are going to be this year with Grizz calling the shots?
Yeah, I think Cade Otton is very important. Hopefully he's not doing the same things that he was doing when we talked about that Chiefs game last year when Mike and Chris went down and he had to become wide receiver one. But I asked Todd Bowles what he's learned about Cade Otton, from the time that he's came into the organization. And he's just so consistent. The way that Todd Bowles talks about Cade Otton and the consistency, the way he goes about his business, the way that he can help on special teams, the way that he can learn routes if he has to, block if he needs to, catch balls if he needs to, the way that he's just willing to do anything and everything for the team. It's sort of the way that he's talked about Anthony Nelson in the past. The way that Anthony Nelson is on the defensive side of the ball is what I like to call Cade Otton on the offensive side of the ball. Cade Otton's a little bit more of an important piece just by the amount of snaps that he would play, considering the team. If everyone is healthy, Nelson's probably not going to see the field as much as Otton is. But you got to remember, Otton's also a guy who was logging like north of 90% snap share, or like just like crazy numbers. Some of the best tight ends in the league don't log that stuff. I mean, he was in elite category for snap count. And to do that is so impressive. So he is a key component to this team. Certainly, we know what life looks like without Cade now because he went down, and you kind of move Payne Durham into that blocking role, and then you move Devin Culp into more of that receiving role. But again, Cade can do both, and his blocking has gotten so much better since the day that he's come into this organization, since the day that he was working alongside Cameron Brate. His blocking and his smart, like his ability to learn on the fly and in games and realize some kind of like some tricks of the trade of I don't really have to like square up these big dudes who are going to pulverize me. I just got to get like footwork and position, and that's going to take care of the rest. So I think that he is vitally important. And now that you have weapons on weapons on weapons on weapons that you just mentioned, Cade Otton slips through the cracks, right? So now you got to worry about Mike and doubling him, and Chris coming out of the slot, and Ibuka, and then you have Cade sort of in the middle. Like, you can't do it all. And that was sort of the formula for how the Bucs won the Super Bowl in 2020, and how they, looking back on it, maybe should have at least made the Super Bowl in 2021, because that team certainly had the goods. But that was it, right? Like Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, certainly Brown and Gronk are greater than what Otton and Ibuka are right now. Not saying they're the same, but it's the same ilk of just flooding the field with so much talent that defensively you simply have to have dudes at every position to stop me, because I am going to find the mismatch and you're screwed. So that's where Otton, I think, comes in, is that he's going to be the forgotten piece in everything. Not by any of us, but the forgotten piece for defenses when they're going to scheme is just you essentially go into these games saying, look, if Cade Otton's going to beat us, then Cade Otton's going to beat us. And so that's where I think his role can be matchup dependent, really exploiting weaknesses in certain games where they can wean off of maybe Mike and Chris and some things that the teams are doing to limit them and shovel the load to Cade and keep other teams honest. So love Cade, love everything that he's about. A true winner in every sense of it, and you need dudes like Cade on a Super Bowl winning team, and I just appreciate his consistency from day one entering the building.
Well, and to your point, 2023, 97% of snaps. 2024, he only played 14 games, 92% of snaps.
Like, that's insane. I want people, if you want a homework assignment out there, I want you to go through every tight end, go through the top 15 tight ends in the league last year in receiving. Go check out their snap count. And then you will realize how crazy it is that Cade Otton's logging that snap count. Like, he has been a dude for this team and really an unsung hero. And Todd Bowles certainly makes it a point to kind of say that thing, to say that line to the media when asked about Cade. But I still don't think Cade gets the love that he deserves.
I would agree. But also, to be fair, it's not just Cade. Payne Durham, Devin Culp, they both showed late in the year when Cade went down that they can be threats in the passing game as well. So, again, it goes back to your point that even if Cade is on the field, you got to make sure that Durham or Culp aren't on the other side of the line, because one of those guys can sneak out, and now all of a sudden you got a tight end seam uncovered right up the middle, and Baker's going to eat you alive. So these tight ends, as much as we love talking about the receivers and how exciting that is, and the running backs and all that, like, these tight ends can make you pay if you are not prepared for them.
I am wondering how much 12 personnel Grizzard's going to deploy. Last year, they kind of did it out of necessity. I do believe this is going to be a team that wants to run predominantly out of 11 personnel. So that would mean that Cade would be the guy out there and just Cade. But they do have that in their arsenal. And we even saw 13 personnel last year against the Chargers, right? So they can do what they want versus specific opponents. They have that in the toolbox. It's just a matter of, and that's really the best teams, right? Of not really running the same thing week in and week out, depending on your opponent, depending on their weaknesses, depending on how they're built. That's how you want to deploy it. So they have that in their capabilities, and certainly I think Payne Durham has done a great. I mean, he's a great blocker. Gets a few opportunities there to catch the ball. But going to Devin Culp, just somebody who was a little bit of a project as a seventh rounder at Washington. I don't think you can ask more of a dude when I say to certain players, or certain players are told, look, you only have a small amount of opportunities, and sometimes that's all you get. You got to prove in whatever opportunity you have out there that you can do the job, because if it's 8 plays, you better make that the best 8 plays, because if they're bad, we're moving on. And Devin Culp, man, he didn't have a lot of receptions last year. He was mostly a healthy scratch for most of the season. But when Cade went down, and there were a handful of third downs there where Baker fired in a ball to him, he came up every time. Every time he came through. And that's the stuff that really encourages you moving forward, because he was a dude that they could rely on, not just to make random catches here or there, but they were money down catches. And so that's what impressed me the most.
6 targets, 5 receptions. 4 of those receptions resulted in a first down. That's what you need right there.
Yeah. Don't count the snaps, make the snaps count. William Golston, I remember him saying that, and that's always stuck with me.
All right, Evan, what do we have on tap over on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Remember, we got the Ultimate Florida Sports Show streaming on the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. You can check that out. My friend Chris Porter and I there in Jacksonville. Right now we're in the OTAs, mandatory mini camp sort of deal. So we're breaking down Jags and Bucks. along with some other happenings. Rays doing well, Panthers in the Stanley Cup final, Gators. So whatever it might be, we're touching on all Florida sports. And then also 10tampabay.com. You can check me out 6 and 11 o'clock on 10 Tampa Bay if you're in the Tampa Bay area. That's Channel 10, by the way, if you couldn't catch the 10 Tampa Bay portion of that. But really, 10 Tampa Bay Plus, you can find everything on your own time. So it's perfect.
All right. Please make sure that you are checking out everything going on there at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at Yarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. We're on the TikToks at
on the TikToks.
Follow there and stand up for old Unk here when these people start attacking me in the comments. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts, and become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you don't want to become an insider and you want to help support the show, leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.